Good morning, trading fam. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about Bitcoin exclusively. We're going to be digging into the charts, doing some technical analysis. As you know, recently I made a post regarding Bitcoin. I had a target of 81,000. Do I still think we're going to get there? The short answer is yes. However, I did exit some of my position, actually all of my position in a recent trade, finding resistance at 73,500. I'm going to talk about where that resistance came from and what I see next for Bitcoin. Midterm and long term, I do still think we are going to hit that 81, 82,000 overhead resistance, and after that we'll discuss what's next. Okay guys, we're going to start out here on the Bitcoin daily chart, and you can see here, if I pull out an arrow, we got a buy indicator from my pivot zones indicator over here in February 7th to be exact. My indicator gave us a buy. Of course, I waited a little bit, as is common practice for me on these. It's not always right 100% of the time. I want to make sure we have a good pivot zone there. Sometimes I'll get an indicator buy alert before the pivot zone's liquidity block forms, but I want to see both of these indicators fire off and we get a buy signal inside of one of these liquidity blocks before I am ready to enter. And that we did on February 7th, I believe was the date here. Yep, February 7th, we got that buy indicator. Following that, we got this nice bullish channel showing me that this was in fact a bull flag and we would break out and go up. Sure enough, we did hit resistance right here at approximately 73,500, and that was it for the time. Now, I didn't put out any trade alerts, but I did sell there, both in my copy trades account and also in the public portfolio. And I did sell there because I recognized this was an important resistance. And you can see that blue line there, that's the 50-day moving average. That's coming down to help out in terms of resistance. So I'm looking to re-enter again, and you can see what, this white arrow here that points up to the 81,000. 81,000 is still my target, but I do think we'll come back down to a good area of entry at around, I would say 64.5, 65,000 before we proceed up again. Now, let's talk about this white line. Where does this come from? I'm going to zoom out to the weekly here and show you what I had spotted. First of all, you see this red ascending trend line. That is the 2021 top trend lines extended. So that is also going to be resistance. That's where the 81,000 comes from. If you want to know why I'm expecting 81,000 to be, our top resistance before we proceed down again. Again, guys, longer term, I'm still bearish unless we beat that 81,000. All right, so we've got to beat this red trend line on the daily with confirmation, preferably on the weekly with confirmation, and that's another candle opening and closing higher than the last, above 81,000, before I start to turn bullish again. As of now, I am only trading bounces and to the downside because I still am bearish, and I'm going to talk about where I think Bitcoin will end up before this bear market actually turns. But again, this white trend line comes over here in March. I think it was March of 2024. We hit it several times. Again, over here, we hit it in October of 2024. And you can tell that this was solid resistance because the minute we broke above big, breaking both the white and the red trend line and moving up rather rapidly. All right, so this is definitely resistance on the daily. However, zooming back into the daily, I do think we are going to beat that trend line eventually and head towards that 81,000, 82,000 mark, that target. All right, so I did take profit this week, although I didn't put out trade alerts. Both in my copy trade account, I sold at 73,000 as soon as I spotted that resistance. Do I have this thing in automatic? Yes. Okay. So I sold there at 73.5. And then in my public portfolio, I actually just put a stop limit. I was trading BITO, the ETF, and my stop limit, I believe, was around $9.50. And that was triggered, so that sold the other half of my trade. Now, where am I looking to re-enter? All right, so you can see this white arrow here comes down to a trend line. I'm actually looking to re-enter exactly where I got in the first time, which was right around 64.5. That's where I entered the first trade. All right, so I think we will come down to 64.5, maybe 65,000. Somewhere around there, I'm going to look to re-enter. And then you can see this white trend line here. That is going to provide us some support. I think we bounce and try again. All right. And if we can beat this white trend line and the 50-day moving average, which is coming down to help, then I think we will for sure go to 81,000, 82,000 as a target before this particular pump is all over. All right, I just wanted to get rid of some markings there on my chart and show you from this perspective. This is the monthly. We'll revisit this head and shoulders that is currently playing out. And the target that I have for this head and shoulders is down here. This is a generous target. If I'm being more specific, okay, so this target is 40 to 50,000. If I'm being more specific, I would say that 350-day, well, that's a 350 week simple moving average, is a very good target. Below that is extremely bearish. But in other videos, I've talked about a price of 38 to 42,000. It definitely is possible that we wick down to those levels. But I definitely am going to start averaging in, once we hit this 81, 82,000 and go below our white trend line here and go below really this 200 day, this red line is a 200 week, I should say, simple moving average. That's where I begin dollar cost averaging in for a longer term buy and hold. But this target here, the 350 simple moving average, currently at 45,000, is a good target down. Again, this is my longer term bearish sentiment, and I begin taking advantage of that strategy once we hit 81, 82,000. I think that'll provide enough resistance where we continue our downward momentum. So again, shorter term guys, look for us to come back down to this 64.5 mark, 65,000, somewhere in there as I look to re-enter. I will play that bounce once again. Again, my longer, my midterm target is 81, 82,000. I think a lot of retail will be excited once we get back up there, and we'll start to, once we get above 73.5, you'll see a lot of buyers come back in, a lot of short squeeze happening, and then that's where big institution, something, I don't know. This is just a lot of resistance here, guys, and I don't think we're just going to go right back above that. That is an important trend line, and that's where I begin to swap out again, unless I see a daily confirmation candle above this 81, 82,000 resistance trend line, and preferably I want to see that on the weekly before I even start to think about going bullish again. All right, otherwise we just come up here, tap our heads on this, and proceed down to those targets I just mentioned. Hopefully that helps you all, and you know what's going on with my Bitcoin analysis and strategy. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, you know what to do. I hate to be one of those guys that begs for the likes and the comments and the subscribes because it's so ad nauseum, but it truly does help the channel out, and it helps me to put out this content. It inspires me and encourages me to keep going, that you find the content valuable. In the future, I will have some announcements about my copy trade account, which you know I've been beta testing. It has gone very well. I'm up, what, like 15% so far since I began 2 months ago. And so I'm hoping to get that portfolio up to the same rate of gain as my public portfolio, which you all can see if you follow my channel, which now is around 56% since the introduction of my pivot zones indicator. And speaking of my pivot zones indicator, that is that's an invite only indicator, and you can subscribe to my channel and have access to that if you're so inclined, and if that's something you would like to do. If you like to trade your own stocks and not just copy what I do, you can do that, and the indicator works very well. As I said with the Bitcoin chart, the reason I've gone long is because of my pivot zones indicator. It fired a buy signal, and as I back test this thing on Bitcoin specifically, it has over a 90% plus success rate. So I am definitely not ignoring that, even though I'm a bearish, bias overall on Bitcoin. I have gone long on Bitcoin because specifically of this pivot zones indicator firing a buy signal. It's a very good indicator, and I'm glad all these years of doing technical analysis, I finally found something that's simple, and it just says buy and you buy, and it says sell and you sell. So if you're not familiar with my pivot zones indicator, I will have a link in the description, and you can view how that works. Until the next video, peace, y'all.